To lace the loom for the smaller medallion, this is the one we did in class, and we just looped and looped and looped around the outside of this loom. You still need about the same length of thread. I usually go with about 45 inches of my waist thread, and I'll go ahead and thread a needle with that amount of yarn, and we'll get started lacing that loom. This method is going to be true for any of the looms that have two sizes apart. So you can see on this one I have a smaller heart inside of a larger heart. So anytime you're doing the inner pattern, you'll lace your loom this way. And this one has 4 different rings that you would still apply the same method for any of the inner patterns that you want to do. So on this loom we have the 2 sizes that I just showed you, and so I want to make this smaller medallion. So I'm going to use these holes that belong to the larger medallion to help me lace for the smaller ring. And when I'm referring to these holes, I'm going to say bottom and top. So that's the inner and the outer. So that's what I really should say, but it's going to be bottom and top. So I just stick my needle in any one of the holes. It doesn't matter whether it's top or bottom, but I usually start at a bottom hole. And I want to reserve, just as I did before, I want to reserve enough to help me tie a knot at the end. And I've got some leftover tape here that I can use as long as it holds tight. Make sure it doesn't slip. So I'm going to make a bar across here. So this is going to save thread, so you don't have to loop and loop and loop around all that area. So instead of looping in and out, I think I'll save thread by just going over to the very next hole at the top, jumping over there, and then going into the bottom. So again, you want these tight because our lace is going to be anchored on these threads. You don't want that floppy. So pull them tight. So I went out through a bottom one, so I need to jump over and come up through a bottom one. That way this is saving me some thread rather than doing the loopies. So get all that out of the way. So I'm going to go make my next bar or securing thread, and then since I went down in a top, I'm going to come back up through a top. So this is the way I talk to myself when I'm doing this. I'll say bottom, bottom, top, top, and again bottom, bottom, and so on, all the way around the loom. And when we get to the end, we'll tie a knot just like we did for the previous loom, but I'll meet you back there in just a minute. I'm going down through the last hole here, and if you didn't accidentally loop, your loom should look like this on the back. And it doesn't matter if you accidentally skipped a step and looped, as long as your anchor points are firm. So mine are kind of loose there because that's the end of the row, but they all need to be nice and tight. And so I can see that I had covered some of my holes with tape, so I got some tape mess going on there. But now I'm just going to trim this long thread to make it easier to tie my knot, but not too short because I like long threads to tie my knots. So just like we did on the previous loom, I'm going to cross over twice just to help the thread hold until I can get the knot made. So that's 1, 2, passing it through. And whatever knot you want to do is fine, as long as it holds tight. So that I can kind of let go and I don't have to have anybody put their finger there. So I'm going to pass it through one more time, and then one more time. because these have to hold, and I'll usually put fray check there because you don't want these knots to slip, because this thing is going to have our medallion really stretched tight on there once we spread our web. So from this point you just go watch the other video and spread your web and make your design, whatever design you want to make on this smaller part.